for the termination of appointments of 3 suspended resident electoral commissioners. Mr. President, with your permission, I wish to move the motion.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. Motion on the invocation of Section 157 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as altered for the termination of the appointment of the 3 suspended resident electoral commissioners. The Senate is aware of an executive communication from Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation, requesting the Senate to invoke Section 157 sub 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended to formally terminate the appointment of Dr. Nura Ali, Sokoto State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Barrister Hudu Yunusa Ari, Adamawa State Resident Electoral Commissioner, and Professor Ikemefuna Chijioke Uzochukwu, Abia State Resident Electoral Commissioner, respectively. Senate is also aware that the aforementioned resident electoral commissioners were early suspended in 2022 and 2023, bordering on allegations of infractions of Electoral Act, compromise of elections, and abandonment of duty without cogent reasons. Senate notes from security reports from the Office of the National Security Advisor and the Department of State Services that Dr. Nura Ali was indicted for compromising the 2023 presidential and National Assembly elections through acts of incompetence and corruption, whereby he reportedly confessed to having received the sum of $150,000 from politicians upon investigation by the DSS. Barrister Hudu Yunusa Ari was suspended by former President Muhammadu Buhari after a prima facie case was instituted against him for usurping the power of the returning officer to declare the governorship election result, and Professor Ikemefuna Chijioke Uzochukwu was suspended for undermining election process by mishandling of logistics and abandonment of governorship and state assembly elections, as well as his refusal to reschedule supplementary elections. Senate is also aware that by virtue of the provisions of Section 157 sub 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as altered, which stipulates that, quote, a person holding any of the offices to which this section applies may only be removed from that office by the President acting on an address supported by 2/3 majority of the Senate, praying that he be so removed for inability to discharge the functions of the office, whether arising from infirmity of mind or body or any other cause, or for misconduct, unquote. The Senate is empowered to embark on this legislative process, which is aimed at setting the stage for the eventual removal of the suspended resident electoral commissioners. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Senate is also aware that the Independent National Electoral Commission is one of the offices mentioned in subsection 2 of the aforementioned provision of the Constitution. Accordingly, it is apt for the Senate to invoke and activate the provision of Section 157 sub 1 of the Constitution to remove the suspended resident electoral commissioners in line with the resolve of the 10th Senate to uphold the rule of law and sustain the ideals of morality and the tenets of corporate governance in Nigeria. Accordingly, resolves to invoke and activate the constitutional provision as enshrined in Section 157 sub 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as altered by forwarding an address supported by 2/3 majority of the Senate to be acted upon by Mr. President for the official removal of Dr. Nura Ali, Sokoto State Resident Electoral Commission, Barrister Hudu Yunusa Ari, Adamawa State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Professor Ikemefuna Chijoke Uzochukwu, Abia State Resident Electoral Commissioner, respectively. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I so move.
Minority Leader, you may wish to second the motion.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I second the motion ably moved by the Senate leader on the need to invoke Section 157 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, for the termination of appointment of the 3 suspended resident electoral commissioners. Mr. President, with your kind indulgence, I make a few comments. Mr. President, I'm aware that this present administration has promised Nigerians that they will fight corruption in all its ramifications. And so, for this purpose, for this reason, the termination of these officers who appear to have compromised themselves will serve as a very veritable deterrence to other officers in the public service. I therefore urge my colleagues in the Senate to support this motion to further enhance the capacity of anti-corruption agencies in the country to carry out their duties without fear or favor. I so second, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. This motion, Mr. President, is res ipsa liquidum. It speaks for itself, and therefore doesn't need much ado for its passage. But be that as it may, I want to say that the philosophical cornerstone behind this motion is to merely reinforce Section 157, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, in order to insulate these offices from the whims and caprices of the appointing authorities and to guarantee their independence and impartiality to conduct their statutory and constitutional duties without let or hindrance. That is the genesis behind this provision. And that is why for these officers to be removed, there is a need for an address of the Senate, supported by 2/3 majority, for them to be removed from office. So we are merely called upon to discharge or perform our constitutional responsibility of safeguarding these very important offices from executive influence and interference in the discharge of their duties. But where it is manifestly proven that there is need for their removal, it has to be supported by the National Assembly, who enjoys the mandate of the people. And as at the time we commenced this sitting, 81 senators have signed the register. And therefore, based on our rules, we have, plus the 10 of us who are principal officers, making 91. Therefore, we have constituted two-third majority, more than two-third majority in order to carry out this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. The distinguished colleagues, the 84 senators have signed, and even without the leadership, by the time you add leadership who do not sign, you have 94. And the only reason, 90, 91, okay, 81, where the clerk said 84. Okay, you said 81? 81 plus the leadership, that is 91. 91, that is clerk, is that more than two-thirds? Huh? More than two-thirds. Okay, so I put the question. Invoke and activate the constitutional provision as enshrined in Section 1571 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as altered by forwarding an address supported by two-thirds majority of the Senate to be answered upon by Mr. President for official removal of Dr. Nuru Ali Sokoto, State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Barrister Hudu Yunusa Ari Adamawa, State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Professor Ekeme Funa Chijoke, Uzo Chukwu, Abia State Resident Electoral Commissioner, respectively. Those in support of the removal of the 3 resident electoral commissioners suspended since 2022 for various acts of malfeasance and fraud and behaviors unbecoming of resident electoral commissioners, say aye. Those against say nay. Nobody. The ayes have it.